Have you thought about making a move to the Portland metro area? Well, stick around because in today's video, we're going to give you, from all of our vast experience, 5 types of houses that are red flags that you may want to consider whether you should move forward on them or not. And if you stick around to the end, we're going to give you our bonus red flag house. So we're getting after it right now.
If this is your first time to the channel and you want to know everything there is to know about living in the greater Portland metro area, then make sure you click that subscribe button and tap that notification bell so that you can be the first to know about all the cool things happening in the greater Portland area.
I'm Ann Stewart. This is Erica Hagfirst. We are your go-to gals if you're thinking about making a move to the Portland area. We love what we do and putting out videos every week on Portland life. All of our contact information is in the description below, so don't hesitate to reach out to us. We love getting those texts. Got a few this week. Calls, and we can set up a Zoom call to get on and learn more about making that move. So we're going to tell you today about 5 red flag properties with a bonus. And we want to preface by saying we kind of analyze these properties with certain criteria, right, Erica?
Yeah, we got about 4 criteria that we're going to go over.
One is insurance. So whether you have to be concerned about there being an insurance problem, which we'll share with you individually on the red flags, what might be a concern. We've got safety, whether there's a big safety concern. We've got one that is cost prohibitive because some of these you're going to be really aware of the fact that it could be cost prohibitive. And the last one is resale. Sorry, I had to check my notes because I want to make sure I got them all. But resale, whether you should be concerned about this showing up in resale, right?
Yeah, it's always important. I mean, depending on the market you buy in, we tend to overlook red flags. However, you should be aware of something that could pop up if it's a different market when you go to sell, which you never know what the market's going to be doing. So you need to keep these in the back of your mind.
And these may be Portland dependent. You know, there's places in the country where maybe you don't have to worry about these as much. And we'll kind of point that out as we go through our red flags. But from our vast experience of selling properties and dealing with things and seeing buyers buy, we want to share with you what we think here in the Portland area you would want to know as a consumer when you go to buy and the red flags you should be on the lookout for. So the first red flag type of house that you should be on the lookout for is a house with a pool. Now here in Portland, we don't have a lot of pools. That's the good news. But we do have some. And why do we recommend maybe taking a little bit of a step back on houses with pools is because honestly, the ability to enjoy a pool is very limited here in the Pacific Northwest compared to how much enjoyment you get. And there's a lot of maintenance and upkeep and cost.
Well, especially here in Portland or the greater Northwest, the maintenance on a pool is absolutely ridiculous. You know, I mean, our summers and falls are getting a little bit longer, so you can kind of, you know, have a little bit of a conversation about how long you can enjoy it. And obviously, if you decide to heat it, you could enjoy it maybe year round. However, the
You're going to want to heat it. For sure.
Yes, at that point, you're heating it. However, the maintenance on a pool, even just in regular terms, I mean, you're minimally looking at a couple $100s a month. And that's if you have some sort of passive way to heat it. You know, we were just looking at a house for some clients and it had a saltwater pool. It was $250 a month just on bi-weekly maintenance, two times a month, whatever that is.
Bi-weekly,
And then, you know, but they had solar heat in place. So they had already spent some money to make sure it, you know, that they had that. And then, you know, if you have trees around your property, you got to make sure that you can keep it clean. You know, there's a lot of additional aspects to that cost of just keeping these things going up here that you don't run into. Now, you know, pools in other markets are a big deal and people want them.
Almost required. Like when we get people from California, Florida, Texas, they're like, we want a house with a pool. It's like, not up here.
No. And so, you know, just that cost aspect for most people in our market is enough to make it almost check against the house versus a check for the house.
Yeah.
So,
and I want to share my brief experience because I grew up in the Pacific Northwest right here in Portland and I had a pool growing up. And back then they didn't really require fences. Nowadays they may require you to put some, you know, fencing around it for safety reasons for animals or children or whatnot. But I got to fish out critters that would come to the water, water pool, whatever you want to call it, water source that they were in there drinking, and they would fall in. There was no way for them to get out. And literally, I can't tell you the horror stories of like fishing out dead animals or animals that were barely making it. And we were constantly fighting broken water pipes, frozen water pipes, cleaning. I mean, it was a nightmare to keep up with. Now, I did have some enjoyment as a kid with a pool. Don't get me wrong. The summers were pretty awesome. Every neighbor in the neighborhood wanted to come swim in our pool, but watching the upkeep was pretty insane. So just something to be aware of if you want a pool or if you find a house with a pool.
Yeah. And then, there's the insurance aspect. As you mentioned, insurance is a big, it's an additional cost on top of what your home insurance is going to be, or it's going to increase that price because you have the pool and it could be a hindrance, I mean, obviously if something gets damaged with it and you make a claim, or if you have an issue with, somebody getting hurt in the pool or, worse yet. And so just things to think about. I know in looking at pools on homes, a lot of them don't have fences around there, but that could be something that's changing. Insurance is getting very sticky. I've got a couple of friends who are insurance agents, and more they are having some serious conversations with homeowners in terms of their expectations for, what you do to your home so that they will insure you. And I'm sure it's just a matter of time before they're required. The fences around the property are required.
Yeah, so don't be surprised. So we're going to rate this one as insurance issues potentially.
Yep.
Cost prohibitive because you're going to pay for heating it, maintaining it, and maybe insurance costs. And safety, because quite frankly, you've got to worry about making sure, people don't accidentally fall in or things of that nature.
Yeah, so 3 red flags out of 4. That's pretty big.
Yeah.
All right, so our next red flag to be aware of when purchasing a property is condos. Now, for a lot of people, condos seem like a really good entry-level option, or maybe you don't want a lot of maintenance to go along with your home or, living space. The condos, however, fall into a lot of the categories that we're looking at. So insurance can be a big issue. The resale of these can be a big issue, and then cost. So Anne, let's dive into these. Insurance. You know a little bit about this.
Yeah, so I have been hearing, seeing, and experiencing from out in the field that a lot of insurance companies are starting to really become cost prohibitive on HOAs. I'm not talking about the internal insurance that you're going to carry in the condo when you own it. I'm talking about the HOA insurance. So a lot of HOAs are finding themselves in the predicament where when the renewal comes up, they're either not willing to renew it, or when the renewal comes up, they're renewing it for an extraordinary cost. For example, I have a family member with a condo who's on the board. Their annual cost of HOA insurance was $80,000 a year. They barely got an insurance company to renew them when the anniversary date came up, and they were charged $300,000 instead of $80,000 just to get it insured. And I'm hearing these stories over and over and over again. So it's a concerning pattern for us because, we do show all kinds of inventory, specifically condos, and we want people to be aware that this is happening because this is a potential risk factor for cost on your behalf, because they tend to pass those costs on if the insurance goes up to the people that own it. In some serious cases, they're having it where it's very difficult to resale the property because the insurance HOA has gotten so high that it makes it very difficult. So, and we're seeing this around the country. It's not just specifically to Portland. In fact, it started in other states, but we're starting to see it trickle into the Portland metro area. So we just want people to be aware of, if your choice of buying a house is a condo, just be aware of this, that it is a possible risk factor when you go to buy and own one of these types of inventory. So we're giving this one kind of 3 red flags: insurance, cost prohibitive, it's not safety yet. Resale.
Yeah.
Resale.
Well, and to go along with the resale, we experienced this during COVID, but lifestyle. The resale on condos, you will gain equity. However, you have to remember that there's so many things that go along with it. Assessments are a big part of HOAs. And so that kind of hits on both that cost and that resale factor, because so often, especially with the larger condo units and buildings, we're finding that a lot of them end up with having massive HOA assessments. Yeah. And it's because they have to go in, they have to do these projects, or maybe there was an issue during the build of these condo buildings. And so, the larger the building, the bigger the bill. And that's got to get passed on. And it's usually broken down by square footage, you know, how much of an interest do you have in the actual building. And so, you know, when you're looking at assessments of, you know, tens of thousands of dollars sometimes, and you're getting multiple of them, it adds a really big bill, because that's on top of, you know, your HOA already and on top of your mortgage. So you've got 3 potential bills, you know, coming with your dwelling.
Yeah.
And so just something to be aware of, because, you know, there was a day and a time when assessments were far and few between, but they're pretty common these days. And again, a really good reminder that if a condo is a type of lifestyle that you want to have, make sure you dive into those HOA documents. It's going to be real dry reading, but you really have to make sure that you truly understand the health of the HOA and anything that might be coming down the pike in terms of assessments or increase in HOA dues, so that you don't get blindsided by something, you know, that happens.
Because it actually can hurt your resale, meaning there's condominiums right now in downtown Portland that they can't sell the units because there's either litigation going on, which you can't sell during litigation, or there's huge assessments happening, which somebody has to pay off, and buyers don't want to take on those problems, right? Or the financing, you know, lenders don't want to see that the HOA is in trouble or having big assessments or insurance issues. So you can almost trap yourself in a condo if you pick the wrong one. So we just give this a big red flag.
Yeah, you definitely need to do some due diligence if this is the only route you want to go, but huge red flag for us.
Okay, the third red flag is steep. What do we mean by steep? Steep driveway, steep stairs, steep access roads
into your home. You know, we have a pretty mild climate here, but there's always going to be issues. And, you know, if it's hard to get to your property, that's a problem. Even if it's a paved road, think about the wintertime. Is that area going to be de-iced? Are you going to be able to get in and out of your property? You know, people love hills and buying homes on hills because you got views. That also means that you're going to have access issues. Or gravel roads, steep, you know, twisty, turny roads that are steep going into your property, really difficult. And they're difficult for a couple of reasons. So obviously, getting, you know, equipment or cars or vehicles into the property, but also walking. I mean, you know, that's the biggest problem with steep driveways is we see with families so often that, you know, you get out of your car and your car doors won't stay open, so they can't get their kids out of their car. Or, you know, the car door could slam their kid as they're getting out of the vehicle. It's also not super ideal for, you know, the elderly who may have mobility issues.
And well, honestly, steep driveways, I mean, the first thing a buyer does when they pull up to a steep driveway is go, ooh, gosh, getting groceries out, that car door is going to hit me. Going up really steep steps up to the main level, that can be a real hindrance. We've seen a lot of houses struggle to sell because of how steep driveways or staircases are to get up to the main house. So if you find a house you like in an area you like, but it's got steep driveway, steep stairs, it's definitely worth consideration, because it probably is going to affect you in resale when you go to sell the house. You may not mind the stairs, but somebody else is probably going to mind the stairs. And we tend to find those houses stay on the market for longer because it's harder to find the person or people that are willing to tackle the stairs on a daily basis.
Well, and it's, you know, there's the willingness, and then there's the people who just can't do it. I mean, there's a whole group of buyers who need the one level home or the minimal steps or easy steps. And, you know, as we've seen even over time in construction, there has been a lot of variation in your steps. So, you know, you go up and down steps and you're like, oh, this one has a good tread, or I can actually get my whole foot on it, or it's at a nice level grade. So when you add in a super steep stairs or driveway, you know, it just gets a little bit scary. The other thing with that is sometimes low riding vehicles have a hard time with that. So you're stuck parking on the road because you can't even make that transition.
Oh, and I've got another one to throw in there, because I just went on an appointment the other day for somebody who wanted to sell their very steep driveway. And she said she literally has vendors and contractors tell her they don't want to work on her house because of how incredibly steep it is. Because it is. It's like they back up into it and they get stuck, or they can't get up the thing. So,
or they can't get materials to the job site. So just something to think about. You may not, again, in a busy market or a hot market, you may not think that's a big deal to take on a property like that, but in a different market, it's going to be an issue for people.
So we're going to give it 2 red flags, one for resale difficulties and one for safety.
All right, so our 4th red flag is going to be homes on busy roads. So this may not seem like a big deal. You may be like, I'm hard of hearing anyways. It's okay. I don't mind. However, there's some other aspects to think about when you have homes on busy roads. So there's a safety aspect. Obviously, if you have pets or small children, they could get out and they could get hit or, have some sort of accident. That's obviously an issue. The other concern...
Backing out.
I actually just had this. I was driving home the other day and I, am off of a busy road. So it was, FedEx drivers trying to get out and they're struggling because, they've got a lot of traffic to deal with. There's always potential if you have a busy road or a main thoroughfare that they could come through at some point and widen those roads. And, eminent domain is a real thing. And, you could be left with a very drive or a road right at your front door, basically. We've seen it several times. Yep. Bethany had this happen. They went through and they widened Bethany Boulevard. And man, some houses lost a lot. And they put in these big walls to help with sound. But that was a major killer for those people's equity in their properties who, already faced a little bit of a challenge that they had.
Yeah, you're already on a busy road.
You're already backing or on a
now
busy
they're
road.
Gonna slice
and
it
now
more.
You're right there. So.
I actually showed, many years ago, I showed this buyer a house on Olson Road, which if you're not familiar with it, it's in Southwest Portland. It's a main artery road. Found the greatest little cutest house for one of our buyers. And it was right on there. And I said, you really should rethink this because the resale is going to kill you. He ended up not buying it. And then literally 8 years later, Olson Road, just all the front yards gone.
Yeah. Yeah, there are several instances. There's some out in Hillsborough with Jackson School Road. Same thing happened. They wanted to go in and widen the road and make it safer and do all these things. And some of these people who, had rather large lots, not only did they lose some of it, but then, the road is right there at your front door and you just can't move your homes. So,
and it just hurts your property value. They're supposed to pay you, but it's not near what you think it should be for the value that goes down in your house.
Yeah. And that's just, it's one of those things that can happen. It's probably going to happen at some point. Maybe not with you, but with somebody who owns that house. And so just, again, one of those red flags that you really need to sit and think about, in a different market, is it still going to be a very sellable home? And, again, there's the safety aspect and, the resale aspect on this one.
2 flags.
2 red flags.
Okay, red flag number 5 is an old home, but an old home that has these things that maybe you can't see visually when you walk through a house, like old knob and tube wiring, older plumbing, systems of the home that are just lurking, that are going to be really costly to either update, improve, or a safety issue. We sell a lot of older homes. Obviously, Portland has tons of older homes.
We're known for lovely older homes.
But they require much more in terms of a home inspection. And usually there's times when we say, gosh, there's so much going on with this home that has not been brought to modern day standards that it's now a consideration for whether you decide to buy it or not, right? So
yeah, so this one kind of hits on 3 red flags. It's got insurance, it's got cost, and it's got safety. So if you look at the insurance aspect, since I got into real estate 8+ years ago, knob and tube has always been an issue to get insured, and it's getting harder and harder.
And by the way, knob and tube, if you're not familiar, is the original electrical. It's kind of cool when you see it. It's really cool when you find it, but it literally is from 1920s.
It's so old.
It's original.
Yeah. So, if that is still present and being in use in a home, very hard to get insured. You're going to pay a higher rate. I've actually even heard of insurance companies starting to require that you have a plan to remediate, i.e. remove it from the home or at least decommission it and put in different wiring for your home. So that kind of leads you into the cost aspect of old homes. And aside from having to update the systems if they haven't been updated already or along the years, it's just the idea that there's a lot going on in these homes. And the structure of the property could be 100+ years old. We see this a lot, and some of them have been amazingly maintained. However, some of them have been moderately or not as well maintained. And the cost to keep the character is very expensive. Now, the cool thing is Portland has a lot of these contractors that are really great and specialize in this, but you're going to pay for it.
Yep.
And if there's any issues with surfaces, like asbestos still in the home or, lead-based paint or some of these things, then you could have even higher costs to bring this home up to, its peakability. So something to think about there. And then the safety of them, that kind of, falls out of that last one is that, you know, you may have things like lead-based paint in these homes. You may have asbestos surfaces in the home still that
You
you're
could
going to
even
have to deal
have
with.
people add on to the home and not use permits because
Yeah.
these are 100-plus-year-old homes.
Yep.
They've had many owners over time. Maybe it was remodeled or updated back in 60s and 80s and so on. So there's more going on with these older homes.
Yep.
And what we always try to tell people is like really assess what you're getting because everyone loves that older charm. And as long as somebody's brought the house up to somewhat modern day standards, but what we don't like to see, and the big red flag for us is like the original stuff or stuff that's like decades old that we know is going to be cost prohibitive for you or a potential safety, you know, concern, or even just insurance. Like you're not going to be able to get it insured for being able to own it. So that's our red flag on those older homes.
Three big red flags for the older homes.
And because you stuck around to the end, we're going to give you our bonus red flag. And that is buying in a floodplain. Now, the good news is we don't have a ton of floodplain, shockingly. But there are some things to be aware of with buying near waterways. For instance, in 1996, if you haven't heard, we had a massive flood. I was here. I was bailing out businesses. My grandmother actually lived on the Willamette River, and we were running down there to get all her stuff out. Along waterways, major waterways, there's a good chance you're going to have to get flood insurance because you're near a waterway. Flood insurance is very expensive. So when you go to buy a house, if you're getting financing, they're going to pull to see if you are in a flood insurance area. Oftentimes, the seller has to disclose that anyway. So if you have your heart set on being on a major waterway, just understand you're going to pay a lot per year for flood insurance. It doesn't necessarily mean you're going to flood, but because we had these 50-year floods, one in the 60s and one in 1996 here, they kind of reevaluated a lot of the waterways. Now, Erica, you brought up a really good point about just being on a waterway.
Just being on a waterway or near a source of water that doesn't even seem like it's a lot. I mean,
or that it's not categorized as a floodplain.
Exactly. I mean, I lived near a little creek and I used to run around it, and in heavy rains, especially during the 96 flood, it was pretty intense, like how much it flooded. I mean, to the point where you wouldn't think it could.
Yeah.
And, you know, to go along with it, there are some areas that, you know, like even along the Tualatin River in Hillsborough in the rural country settings where, you know, if those rivers flood, they're going out into the acreage. And there's a lot of areas even in Tualatin that, you know, you see them during the summer, they're dry.
Yeah.
And then you see them during the winter and they are probably
Looks like a lake.
4 to 6 feet deep in a lake. So understanding, you know, what is around you, what are the waterways, how do they deal with water, is it a concern? Very important, because we all know the damage that water does. I mean, it's amazing. It just comes through and destroys things. But yes, being near a waterway or a creek or anything like that, just know what it does. And then, like Ann said, most sellers will disclose if they have to have insurance for being in a flood zone. There are some areas here, Salem, Vernonia, even some areas of Hillsborough, all require and are in flood zones. And even if it's the 100-year flood zone, just be aware of that. You know, we are starting to see a lot more rain happen these days. And
we don't have a ton of natural disasters, but every once in a while, flooding or a lot of water can get into our systems, and you know that's when we all have to, you know, kind of be aware of it. That's why we're bringing it up as a red flag, especially if you're buying properties that are in a floodplain, because you know you're going to be paying higher insurance. So we gave this one an insurance and resale red flag because it's tough to resale anything in a floodplain.
And it's just not one that people think about a lot of times. So make sure you're thinking about those things.
Thanks for staying this long on our video to listen to our 5 red flags. If you think we missed something, comment below. We'd love to hear your input. But this is what we typically try to just keep people aware of as they're out there shopping for a home. And if you don't live in the Portland metro area, you might find these kind of valuable because like you might have said, hey, I want to buy a house with a pool. And you know, in your area where you're at now, it might be totally acceptable, but here it might be something to be a little bit aware of. So we appreciate you being on the video. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.
See ya.